A scoots out of his chair, making it grind against the floorboards, taking a gulp of his bourbon before clinking down the glass on the tabletop. No, this isn't good at all. Flinging papers off of the desk, shifting papers trying to find what they were looking for, frantically throwing around papers and ripping through his drawers. As panic began setting in, his phone began ringing, breaking him from his trance. The phone gradually got louder, until finally he slammed his hand on the phone, silencing it completely, then began searching yet again.
God damn it, A!
X pocketed his phone and rested his back against a tall oak, letting the silence of the night relax his nerves. V smiled as he walked towards a guard while working his way towards X. V snickered at the guard silently creeping behind him. His body moved with deadly accuracy, cutting off all oxygen without hesitation, his left hand latching around the guard's neck, while his right found its way into his medical bag. V plucked a syringe filled with liquid nightshade and stabbed it into the heart of the guard.
The poison will spread quickly. You may have an irritated throat and minor stomach pain, but it only lasts a few minutes.
V covered the guard's mouth and laid the man comfortably on the grass and brushed his hands across the man's face, closing his eyes for the final time.
Can you stop playing chemist for 1 second and help me get out of here?
You ruin everything.
Yeah, whatever. Ugh.
V looked at the radio on the guard's belt and laughed silently as a guard began to continuously call through the radio to reach the dead guard.
Hey, any sign of the target?
Let's go.
Sir, do you copy?
There's no goddamn way the target got away. A grabbed his radio and speaks as calmly as he can into it, shaking and breathing heavily as he spoke. D, get your ass down to the containment area. Torture that prisoner and get every ounce of information from his head. Then, take his life. C grabs the radio off the counter and chuckles slightly. She turned and looked at D and pointed quietly to the radio as the man in the chair began squirming.
What's going on, C? Is there something I missed? Did something happen?
I think we lost the target. He said he wanted to torture the man in the chair and then kill him. After extracting the information, of course.
D reached forward for the paper in front of them and opened it, revealing a rusted combat knife. Its blade looked dull, and the leather hilt was slowly rotting away.
I sure hope the General doesn't try to take this back. I forgot to care for it. It works wonders for torture now, though.
Believe me, when Grandfather finds out, you are going to be in a ton of trouble.
C laughed a little bit, and then looked at the struggling prisoner, then up to D, who was loading a magazine into a small 9mm CCP.
Ooh, what kind of gun is that, D?
D looked up and patted her head, then cocked the gun back and aimed it at a shooting target.
I'll explain later. Let's get this over with, okay? I want to go get something to eat.
A sat heavily into his chair, annoyed that a target had managed to get away. He grabbed his TV remote and sighed, stared at the powerless TV and shook his head, then turned it on, switching to Channel 8 News and began listening.
There have been reported sightings of the Alphabet Gang circling through the internet. Many have claimed sightings of them in forests, some across the street in sewer drains. Their killings have no pattern, told to us by the head chief police. We will never know who they will take next. It's only a matter of time.
In other news, a school shooting took place this time last week, along with several murders that occurred at night, where the families in question were murdered and then hung from the ceiling and wall in the form of a cross, with alphabet letters written on the walls. Lead investigator into the case of the Alphabet Killers had this to say.
We're extremely confused, because this isn't the normal killing pattern of the Alpha K. They're not this rude to their victims. However, we can't rule out anything. I don't have a theory on why they would murder like this all of a sudden. However, as we all know, murderers don't really need a reason to change their style.
As you can see, he has no idea what possessed them to kill so brutally, and we're all wondering the same thing. The gang was never hostile towards people. This brings many of us to ask the question, is this actually the Alpha K? Or is someone trying to frame them? Now, let's go to Rick for traffic.
A powered the TV off and looked at the blank black screen once again, then turned away from the TV and looked at the scattered area that was his office, his anger now replaced with curiosity and worry. Who has been killing under our name? Moreover, why are they killing under our name? This is annoying. Why did I allow myself to get stuck in this position? The only positive side is the money. Everything else is suicide-inducing. All this bullshit creates a very stressful environment. A sat back in his chair and held his radio, swiveling back and forth, trying to make sense of the announcement. He eventually spoke into the radio. How's the mission out there watching the detective? Apparently he's made an announcement about us on the news. I just listened to it. You grabbed the radio from their belt.
Well, he's not left his house since he got home this evening. His family is currently eating dinner. From my position, I can pick any of them off with G's rifle, but...
A black SUV pulled up into the detective's driveway. As 4 men got out, walking towards the door, one of the men knocked on the door and waved the other 3 behind the walls to leave the view of the door. A little girl opened the door and stared at the man. You watched in horror as the man pulled the trigger of his pistol, shooting the little girl in the chest. You stared unmoving as the 4 men entered the house, passing the little girl, who was unmoving, in the entrance of the door. The men moved swiftly, shooting the detective and mother before hanging the mom and dad from the wall by their necks with rope and slitting their Achilles tendons.
We need to get down there. That little girl, she may be in trouble.
A sat still in the chair, staring at the radio, saying nothing, waiting for a notification from you as a slight knock sounded on his door. A looked up at the door as G slowly walked in and stared at A.
I believe we have a rogue cop killing under our name. I've seen this before. As a soldier, I can tell you he's very green in the field we perch in.
Ace nodded slowly, soaking in all of the information that G had laid before him. The time was coming that A would have to make a decision, to hunt the fake or let him be. He sat staring at his radio and picked it up. Well, did anything go down? Anything good? Bad? Come on, why aren't you talking? You grabbed his radio and watched as the men packed up valuables from the house.
Men came. They shot the little girl. They are stealing things from the house. That little girl is still lying there. She looks like she's breathing. Maybe I can help her.
Let them leave you. When they're gone, enter the house. Find any clues as to who this cop is and target them. Then do what you can for the girl. If she's alive, bring her back to us. Then place a bounty on that cop, and make sure he's taken alive.
Loud and clear.
You stared at the little girl through a scope, watching her chest rise and fall slowly as he put his radio away. You glared at the men as they finally left the house, leaving the little girl in the doorway. Slithering down the tree, he snuck across the dirt road that connected the large house to the main asphalt road about 3 blocks down, eventually coming up on the door where the child lay. As you entered, he knelt beside the girl, who was still breathing. He lifted her shirt to the bullet hole and inspected it at entry point. The bullet didn't go completely through her chest. He sighed in relief, knowing she wasn't fatally shot. He removed her shirt and covered her with his jacket to help keep her body temperature up.
This should be enough to keep you alive until my backup gets here. You are coming with me. I will care for you. Not a single hair on your head will be hurt again.
You grabbed his radio as his eyes scouted the foyer. The ceiling was about 10 feet up, with a massive crystal chandelier hanging from the center. A deer head hung above a blank wall where a flat screen must have been, and a bare rug sat underneath a dark coffee table.
God damn, this child lived a nice life.
You grabbed his radio and sent out an SOS to the gang hideout. He sat cradling the little girl in his arms as he waited for what seemed like an eternity, until finally a car door slammed closed outside, revealing C and R. C stared at the child and looked to R, who nodded and picked her up.
I can take care of her in the van. I have supplies and medication. It should hold her off till I get her to J.
C looked at the little girl and up to R, tears falling down their cheek, wiping the tears with their forearm as they walked further into the house, leaving R and U alone beside the front door.
When we find this fuck, there will be hell to pay, no doubt. She will be avenged.
U nodded as he looked up into her eyes. He watched as she walked the little girl to the car, and then began searching the house for C, who was standing completely frozen in the middle of the dining room, staring at the blood message above the parents' bodies. C stared at the husband and wife, who were linked by their intestines to a bomb that had 8 minutes on the clock. She looked to U, who was already calling for the bomb experts.
This is not a drill. We have a C4 bomb that looks like the power from its explosion could leave a 10-foot crater. S and P need to be sent down here at once. We have no time for jokes or anything. That little girl lived, and we can't leave just yet.
S grabbed a radio and pulled P over to her and put it on her belt. She looked directly into P's eyes for a second, her eyes beginning to bubble with excitement.
Get the kids! We're going on a mission! We're actually being called on! Let's make an explosive entrance!
P laughed at S and then grabbed the kids and ran to the garage where their car sat waiting. P began squealing and S jumped up and down as they approached their car with their kids in hand. As S started the car, A walked to the car. A little girl was injured, so you need to be calm when you get there. Get your excitement out on the road. Now be quick. They have about 5 minutes before they all go up in flames. S nodded, laughing as she took off down the road towards Main Street, where the SOS originated. As a loud bang was heard from the house, U sat angrily before the bomb and glared as the time ticked down to 2 minutes, while C sat helplessly watching the window for any sign of P and S, who pulled up as the clock began counting down from 59.
They're here. Now please calm down, Ursa.
U ripped open some blinds and stared at the maroon Audi in the driveway as S and P got out of the car, rushing into the building, singing as they moved forward.
Oh, I'm so excited! Let's make this mission the best ever! Sitting in the HQ was getting boring anyways.
I agree. In we go to play with explosives. We've waited so long.
As their feet met the pool of blood, the smiles on their faces vanished, and they immediately and terrifyingly quickly became serious. The bomb counted down quicker as P and S walked up to it. S took out her kit and began opening the bomb.
This person must pay. How does the saying go? Blood for blood, tooth for tooth.
U nodded and looked up at the parents still hanging on the wall and loaded a bullet into his pistol, glaring at the bomb as it counted down from 15 seconds.
If I survive, this bastard will be on my hit list, and when I get him...
U glared at the single shining bullet in the chamber of his gun, pushing the chamber, making the gun live, feeling anger rise inside of him as he looked up at the bomb.
It's disconnected. The timer won't stop, though. This bomb was relatively simple. Now, where is the little girl?
C pointed to the back of the SUV outside the house where R was sitting.
The little girl in the SUV. But, Ursa, please calm down. We can deal with the bastard later. Right. Now we need to take care of the little girl. There can be no other priorities. We need to leave before the cops show up.
C grabbed U's hand and guided him from the house. U reluctantly followed suit, stepping into the SUV shortly after C. The little girl lied on her back, on a mattress that was locked in position by 4 metal walls. U glared at the house as R backed up and drove towards the main road, followed by P and S in their maroon Audi.
You, calm down. I will make sure that you personally kill the man responsible for harming this child. But for now, focus on helping C keep her alive.
C nodded, Holding a white cloth over the bullet hole, she took his hand and placed it over the child's wound.
Apply pressure. We're almost there. Just hold her still. If we can manage to keep her alive, you can train her and raise her yourself. Maybe she'll warm up to you. She looks pretty young after all.
You nodded as they drove down the road towards the HQ. Staring at the window, he glared at all of the people as they passed.
I promise I'll find who did this to you. If it's the last goddamn thing I do, I promise we will find the man responsible.
3 days earlier. A sat with his feet on his desk, watching the news and contemplating his future in the business of crime.
Unexpected in the small city of Vancouver, we see a rise in crime in the area. Many murders along with the taunting notes written in what seems to be the victim's blood, with a letter of the alphabet lying next to their body. We're claiming these, the alphabet murderers, told to us by Ryan Gillago, head chief of VCPD. The bodies were hung up on a wall using brass nails bent upwards to lock them in place as the blood drained down from the Achilles heel. Let's go to Ryan himself on the scene.
Well, we searched the house, and many things were still in place, and that seemed kind of awkward. So we decided to do some digging. Blood was left all over the floor, and even the 2 kids that lived here were killed brutally. We're still investigating, so this is all the information I am allowed to disclose to the public at this time.
A turned off the TV and stared at the black screen. His blood boiled as he shakily put the radio to his mouth and broadcasted to all of the Alpha K members. Find the fuck that did this and end his pitiful life.